Hello and welcome to Hello Neighbor. Hello Neighbor is an LTC-produced program that introduces neighbor to neighbor here in Lowell. And today we have a very interesting guest, Debra Fowler. She is a U.S. Army veteran, an experienced classroom teacher, and is currently the executive director of History UnErased, which is a nonprofit organization that works to bring LGBT history into classrooms from kindergarten all the way through high school. She has a very interesting story to tell, so welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So great to have you. So before we get into your work with History UnErased, tell us a little bit about your background. For example, where did you grow up and what was your family like?
So when people ask me where I'm from, it's always a complicated answer. I was adopted in Columbus, Ohio, and we lived in Columbus until my father secured a different job in Rochester, New York. So we were there for a number of years, and then my junior high and high school years were spent just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in Murraysville.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Very interesting. And did you have brothers and sisters that in your adoptive family?
Yes, I have a younger brother. And it's always so funny because he's about 6'2", and so I always loved introducing, here's my little brother. So he's a lawyer, he's in DC. Our family life was wonderful. I have wonderful parents and extended family.
Oh, that's so great.
Yes.
Well, very good. So how did you end up here in Lowell?
Wow, random twist of fate. So I was in the Army, and when I left the Army, I was stationed in California and kept migrating south. And in 2001, I left San Diego, California I bought a one-way ticket to South Korea, and I taught English as a foreign language at a private English academy just outside of Ulsan, South Korea. So when I returned to the States, I wanted to be close to my parents, and they retired. They went full circle back to Candia, New Hampshire. So really random twist of fate landed me in Lowell. Wow.
So how did you know Korean?
So my job in the military, in the Army, was a linguist in 98 Gulf, and I attended the Defense Language Institute studying an immersion Korean language, Hangul.
Wow. And why Korean?
Well, the Army chose that for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And actually, to be completely honest, I had orders to go to, near the end of our cycle at the Defense Language Institute, we had orders to report to the second ID, the DMZ, the border between North and South Korea. And that required a top secret security clearance. And they do investigate everything about you. And I have not told this story in its entirety and truthfully. The first time I did was 4 years ago now. And I think it's important to be transparent about this. So I did not complete my term with the military. I was dishonorably discharged. And the reason why is that when I joined the Army in 1986, there was a question on the entrance form. Are you a homosexual? And I had checked no. I knew it was a lie, but I thought a small one. So I was called out of class one day. My company commander handed me a report, and he said, I want you to read this and tell me if this is true. And when they investigated my background, they spoke with someone I had a relationship with who divulged that I was a homosexual. And I denied it. Not true. And so I went back to class, and I don't remember how many days later, I was called out of, to go to the Presidio. The Presidio, let me tell you, in San Francisco, that was the Club Med of the Army. It was gorgeous. So I was taken to this room. It was a large room, and there was a desk with a lie detector machine, a chair,
wow,
and sparse furniture. So I failed the lie detector test. And I stated, and this was one individual in civilian clothes questioning me. And he kept going behind the door saying, I need to consult with the analyst. And I said the only thing I could think of at the time, and that was, it was only once. And so they asked for a written statement. and I gave a written statement, and that wasn't sufficient, and another written statement, and another one. And the idea was that they were going to discern from my statement whether or not I was indeed a homosexual. So they deemed that I was. So I was dishonorably discharged under fraudulent entry.
Oh my gosh, and this kind of follows you through your life.
Yes, but that, because I felt this shame, certainly, but also this overwhelming desire to use what the Army had given me, the language skills. And so a number of years later, I had been trying to continue my language studies, so I would often exchange English lessons for Korean lessons with people who I met at school. And they said to me, oh, you should go and teach in South Korea. And I thought, oh, I can't do that. So after years of encouragement, that is what I did, and discovered that I love teaching, and that is what I was meant to do.
Wonderful. That is such a great story, and how things have changed.
Oh,
well,
yes.
Since
yes.
Clinton, I guess.
Right.
Although we're taking a step backwards now.
Indeed,
Yes.
sadly. And the reality is, trans people who we label and understand today as trans have always existed.
Sure.
And have always served. And that's part of the content that we are developing, looking at Civil War soldiers specifically with History UnErased, one of the units that we develop. It's not labeling anyone in the past or assigning judgment, but hey, look, here are these female-bodied people who passed as soldiers, fought in the Civil War, and their service substantiated the suffragists to say, hey, these women fought as defenders of our republic and deserve the same rights. So.
Yeah. Well, it's such an important story. There is so much in history that we are taught wrong.
Yeah.
And
yes,
wow,
yes.
I mean, so much is coming out now, certainly about our treatment of African Americans over the many years, and yeah, and homosexuality too. Well, it's so great you're doing this.
Well, thank you.
So you came out after getting out of the military to everyone, or did most people that you knew in your family know that you were a lesbian?
Well, it was a very different time. And growing up, I like to explain it this way. People, I use this metaphor, people who lived before Isaac Newton. They lived with gravity, they felt gravity, they experienced gravity every day, though they lacked a term or a concept of it. And when I was young, I can't speak for everyone's experience, but I started to feel a different type of gravitational pull, although I lacked a term or a concept of it. So I didn't know that there was a word attached to that component of myself until I went to college. But after being discharged from the military, I was very careful, and that wasn't something that I thought was important to share or necessary to share.
Yeah. I think people in general don't realize the amount of fear people live with.
Yes.
Just the people that they see on the street every day, the people that they work with, how much fear is in their existence.
Yeah, and that fear, it starts at the top. And the dark days of persecution of gay and lesbian, LGBT people in the military all began really post-World War II, during the Cold War era. And every student learns about Joseph McCarthy and the McCarthy era trials, the domestic anti-communism efforts. But what was inextricably connected to that was the fear of homosexuals compromising national security. And so that McCarthy era lasted a very short time, but the Lavender Scare, which is dubbed now as the Lavender Scare, the Cold War persecution of homosexuals, was not ended until the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Wow.
And
so they equated homosexuality with communism.
Yeah, linking that, but also the undercurrent there was the threat to national security, that homosexual people, because it was just recently medicalized and criminalized, that would compromise, that they would be open to bribery and blackmail.
Wow. Whew. That's a crazy history. That's amazing.
But I do want to say, though, and this is so important, that we pronounce the fact that the advancement of time is not necessarily commensurate with the advancement of equity and equality and social justice. There was a period of, I mean, in the annals of history, before there was this concept of identity, that people who we label and understand today as LGBT plus have always existed, and it was often a non-issue.
Right. It wasn't something that really mattered.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Well, so would you say that the arc of justice, the arc of history bends towards justice, or no?
I think it's a current.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's just from my personal experience and what I have learned and been exposed to. I think there are different arcs.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what motivates you? What motivate? I understand what motivated you to become a teacher is finding your love of teaching in Korea.
Yes.
What motivates you in your work now, and who are your heroes?
Wow. What motivates me in my work now, which doesn't feel like work, it feels very important, and there's always this gnawing sense of urgency.
So it's really a passion for you.
It's a passion.
Yeah.
Yes. And I know that if I had had just one lesson that reflected that piece of gravity, core piece of myself, in elementary school, middle school, high school, that I would not have lived the statistics that are plaguing LGBT youth today relating to risk behaviors, dropout rates, suicidality, and homelessness. And you know, Miriam Morgenstern, the other co-founder of History UnErased, and she's also a former classroom teacher, we know that the content of what is presented to young people, to show them they belong, that they have the capacity to participate and contribute, that's the missing link. Policy is great, but it's capricious, and we're witnessing that now at a rapid escalating scale. But the process of K-12 education we see as the most profound and lasting tool to disrupt the fear and the shame and the misperception, and to reach those young people and keep them in school and keep them motivated and engaged and participatory.
Yeah. They need to see themselves in the curriculum with respect.
With respect and dignity, absolutely. With greatness.
With greatness.
You know, it's not about victimization and oppression. It's about, look at the resiliency. Look at what they did. Their capacity to, despite discriminatory policies, cultural practices, to rise above.
And is curriculum very slow moving? Changes in curriculum?
Oh my goodness. The glacial pace, yes. And that's why we see our work as a grassroots effort. Now Massachusetts has, within their frameworks, Miriam and I we were able to contribute as content advisors for LGBT content and women's history. The framework, it's some content, there's opportunity there, but as far as implementation strategies and funding streams to prepare teachers to do this, that's really not there. So we're working with, our laser focus right now is Massachusetts, working on site with different districts and schools, introducing educators to the content before they're responsible for teaching it, and giving them the resources and the strategies, methods and strategies.
Wow. And how long have you been working on History UnErased?
Miriam and I co-founded History UnErased while we were still, as I like to say, boots on the ground in the trenches. I didn't have an opportunity to serve my country in uniform, but I understand classroom teachers are serving their country. So we founded History UnErased when we were still at Lowell High, and left the classroom in June of 2015 to do this work full-time.
That's fabulous. And so right now you're going around to school districts in Massachusetts with your materials and your teaching. And so you lead workshops with teachers?
Yeah, we have a whole variety. We have a menu. we love to be on site and working directly with humanities educators, introducing them to the content, the implementation strategies. It doesn't have to be daunting. It can be very small things that are incredibly impactful. We also offer summer institutes and 3-day workshops, ongoing mentorships, creating small learning communities for educators so that they then have the agency to lead this in their districts. That's ideal.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about expanding your reach by doing video? Video lessons that you could send out to a school district and say, watch this, and then we'll come out and we'll discuss and finish it up.
That's a great idea. We need to keep talking.
We do, because that would be right up LTC's alley.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah,
yes.
That would be really great. So tell me a little bit about the films that you're going to be showing here at LTC, but that have been out for quite a while.
So the first film is Hard Truth, Levity, and Hope. And that film spotlights 6 refugee students from Nepal, Burma, Congo, Sudan, and Iraq. Mm-hmm. And the impetus for that film was the stories that I taught new immigrants and refugees, as well as Miriam, at Lowell High School. And the richness of who they are, that they were able to transcend unspeakable grief oftentimes, and show up every day with the capacity to not just receive education, but share their education with others. And you know, there's a lot of myth and misperception about new immigrants and refugees, and that's undulating pretty heavily right now.
That they're a drain on the system?
Right, and they're not. They have so much to offer.
Yeah.
And their hope, and this is why we use the word hope and Hard Truth, Levity, and Hope as the end point, because every new immigrant and refugee arrives with hope. And their hope is not to take, but to give, and to have agency, to participate, contribute, and to be valued and treated with respect. And so that was the intention, to introduce the community to these vibrant, beautiful young people.
That's wonderful. And then you moved on to a second film. You just kind of got it in your system to do films?
Well, Connor Crosby, who I worked with, Hard Truth, Levity, and Hope, he was a junior student then, and I connected with him and we worked together.
A junior in high school?
A junior in high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he just had an affinity for doing media?
Yes, and his teachers highly recommend working on this project with Connor, and can't speak highly enough of him as a human being, as a talented filmmaker. And we also had the contributions in editing with to Zina Al-Rawi and Omar Al-Dalimi, who were refugees from Iraq as well, and they were teaching at the high school, and so their contributions helped us frame this as not through the lens of oppression and victimization, but through the lens of empowerment.
Yeah.
And that's what transferred then when Connor had an idea for a second film. He texted me during his freshman year at Fitchburg, saying he had an idea for another film. And he was tired of the continued prejudice and discrimination against gay people, and he wanted to do something about it, activism through filmmaking. And so that evolved to interviews with Lowell High School teachers, students, parents, and other community members.
Yeah, that's great. And so how long did it take you to do what is that one called?
Through Gay Eyes.
Through Gay Eyes. So you interviewed people who had a gay experience or were gay, and just about their experience at Lowell High?
Well, it was, for the teachers, it was about their experience as an LGBT identifying educator and their relationship and what the implications of that within their classroom practice. You know, because it's so true that you teach who you are. And by that I mean being genuine with young people. That I always felt that reaching their spirit first was the most important thing, so that they could trust you and there could be this sense of mutual respect. And if that piece of, and this is what educators were saying, that piece of themselves, that they were denying their students the right to know that was a disservice. And then more broadly, curriculum-wise, the dishonesty is a disservice. So.
Kids can see through dishonesty very quickly.
Can. Yes, they can.
They know. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Well, so who are your heroes in the LGBT movement?
Bayard Rustin.
Oh, who is that?
Bayard Rustin, he's a phenomenal human being. He because of Bayard Rustin's influence on Dr. King, Dr. King removed the weapons from his home and employed the methods of Gandhi. Dr. King took Bayard Rustin under his wing as really his lead strategist for a great number of years. Bayard Rustin was a Quaker, a pacifist, a conscientious objector, a vocalist, and a strategist. And his and he lived openly as a gay man during the 40s, 50s, 60s. And to think about what that meant for Dr. King and his cadre in the movement, that at one point it became a liability, and Bayard Rustin backed away from the movement. But then in 1962, he was called back into the circle because they were trying to organize the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1963. And Bayard Rustin did that. And his name never appears on the program. He read the list of demands, and his name never appears there as well. But the reason why, and that was not an issue for him. He was singularly laser focused on the movement. And there's a quote by him that says, "In every bay and community, we need a group of angelic troublemakers." And so that's my mantra, and I carry it with me. I am striving to be the angelic troublemaker of Bayard Rustin's imagination.
That is awesome. Well, James Baldwin also
absolutely
was an amazing figure and,
yes.
and made such a difference.
Yeah, and through authorship and public speaking, and through the arts. The arts has really historically led the way to hold up a mirror to who we are and what we're tending toward.
Yeah. Anyone else that you can pull out of history?
Oh my goodness, there are so
How about some women?
many. A lot of women. Jane Addams, who, a lot of students study Jane Addams as through the progressive era and suffragists, and she founded Hull House.
She was a Catholic, she was a nun, wasn't she?
She was not a nun, but with Ellen Gates Starr. She founded Hull House in Chicago to serve new immigrants and refugees.
Oh, okay. And
to provide, in fact, they developed the first playground, and I love this piece, if I may digress, that this institute, and it was providing education and services to help these new immigrants, these arrivals, assimilate, and they had the first playground. And other members of the community, young kids, would dig a tunnel underneath the fence, and they all would play together on this playground.
When was that?
This was back in the late 1800s. But so Jane Addams, and then her 40-plus year relationship with Mary Rosette Smith was very significant. And not having the responsibilities of marriage and motherhood freed up a lot of these women during that time to be reformers and social activists. And she subsequently earned a Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh, she did?
She did,
wow.
Yes.
I never even knew anything about her.
She's amazing, yes. Mission driven.
And was she involved in the suffragette movement also?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So a lot of women at that time period lived in what has been designated Boston marriages, and they were regarded as a union, and it was common for them to be referred to as wife and wife in the community.
Oh, really? In the late 1800s?
Yep. Yes.
Really?
And through early 1900s.
And that was just accepted as part of the community?
Absolutely, yep.
Yeah.
It was a non-issue.
And so you're saying that really it was the Red Scare and fear of Russia and communism that kind of elevated homophobia?
Yes, I mean, and if we look globally too, in Germany, the Weimar Republic, there were some policy, paragraph 143, which criminalized to some degree male intimacy. Women weren't included. And then that evolved during World War II to paragraph 175. And during the Holocaust, homosexuals were persecuted.
Right.
So, and that that tide carried over into this pejorative medicalization, criminalization of that.
Wow.
So we're still working to disrupt that.
Well, it's good that we have you, for sure. So, as far as living in Lowell, what do you especially like or dislike about Lowell? We just have a few minutes left.
I love Lowell. I love that Lowell National Historical Park is here. I love that there's the art community has been so significant, including LTC, the arts, lifting their neighbors, lifting the voices within Lowell. There's, you know, the Venice of America with the 9 canal systems, and you can go for a run along the river and be in the city and yet removed from it. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I think it's a perfect place for History UnErased because the park is always trying to unearth more history.
It's a perfect
it's a
metaphor.
Great place.
The birthplace of innovation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, very good. So you think you're going to make this your home? Well, how long have you been in Lowell?
Actually, when I left South Korea, I relocated to Air, and I was teaching in Lowell. But I fell in love with the community so much and my students that I moved into the city of Lowell to Boot Mills in 2008. And my wife and I now live in another loft building.
Oh, very good. And what does she do?
She's a behavior analyst. And she was at the forefront of this profession. She's been doing this for over 25 years. A
behavior analyst for industry, or?
She works with young people with autism.
Oh, okay.
And so she supervises home direct service providers. So she does a lot of parent training and coaching and elevating them to the point where they can then bring their child well socialized into the public. So
wonderful.
She's
so
very
you're
talented.
Both teachers. That's so great. Well, anything else you would like to leave us with?
Please visit unerased.org. Follow us on Twitter, and we have a lot of information on our website, but we also need people to help amplify the need for this. So if the community of Lowell could just start talking about this and support our efforts, and every donation works to bring our resources into the hands of teachers and students who desperately need it.
Well, that's fabulous. Okay, you heard it. Please support History UnErased and through their website.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our next Hello Neighbor. Bye.